Alright, everyone, welcome to episode 29 of the Black and Intellectual Show. I'm coming to you this morning. It is Sunday, June 24th. My birthday is actually in a couple days, so there's something that, there's something that's really been weighing heavily on me for some time now. And the topic of discussion today, honestly, today I'm just freelancing it. I have an article that I just wrote on my blog, blackandintellectual.com, and the title of the article is Advocating for Black Silence on Family Separation, in parentheses, at the border. That's not in the title, but obviously I'm talking about what's going on at the border, is not black liberation. So advocating for black silence on family separation is not black liberation. I made a video a few months ago. I want to say it was back in February, and it was sort of about this same subject. So the title of that previous video was "The Misguided Appeal of Black Nativism in the Age of Trump." And the video didn't get a ton of clicks and things like that, but it was still something that I just felt like I had to do because I needed sort of my opinion and differing opinions out in the ether, so to speak. Because right now in the black space, among a lot of black commentators, it's not just one, it's not just two, it's a lot of different black commentators who are basically parroting the same talking point on this issue. Okay, and I have a big problem with some of the assumptions that are being made. I have a big problem with some of the arguments that are being made, and I think some people are having the wrong reaction to Trumpism, because that's what's really going on here. This is how, and I actually say this in the article that I wrote on Black and Intellectual. It's an interesting study in group position theory to research how different groups, how different less represented. I'm trying to find a way to say minority without actually saying minority, because I actually can't stand that word. But, groups that are less represented in society, it's very interesting to sort of study how those groups react to fascism and dictatorships when they rise. And I don't pretend to be an expert in that subject, an expert in social psychology, or in, the history of dictatorships and things like that. But I'd imagine that the way some African Americans, not all, of course, but the way some are reacting to what's going on at the border is very similar to the way you would see other groups react to dictatorships. Because at a certain point in time, if you get to an issue of different groups, different disadvantaged groups jockeying for position, and I just think there are a lot of things that are being said right now that are not actually helping the black community. So let's actually get started, because like I said, I'm just freelancing it today. I don't really have too many notes. I primarily just want to go over the article that I wrote, because the article that I wrote is basically the summation of my feelings in generals, right? So in recent articles on my blog, I've been using table of contents, because it's a great way to, first of all, section off different parts of an article that's kind of long, but then as well, you allow people to just click on the different bullet points or the different numbers and go to the section they want to read first. So the first section is the growing appeal of pitting black people against immigrants. The second section is co-opting the language of black liberation to fit a black conservative agenda. That is incredibly important, because I don't think a lot of people who listen to Yvette Carnell and Boyce Watkins and Tariq Nasheed, I don't think a lot of people, and not even just them three, but because like I said, it's damn near everybody. and like in the black space on YouTube, on other aspects of social media, like this perception is this talking point is very prevalent. They just happen to be three people with, very large platforms, who are echoing this as well. But then this is also important. It's also important that I think we have counter arguments to this. Okay, because a lot of people are hearing only one thing, and I get the impression that people are hearing kind of what they want to hear. But I'm gonna go into that a little bit deeper when I get to that section. And then the last section is, what is black liberation really? So a lot of people are under the impression that this talking point of black silence on detention centers and internment camps and concentration camps, that's somehow pro-black, or that's somehow representative of black liberation. And I don't believe that. I think what you hear, what a lot of people are repeating nowadays is something else. I don't call it black liberation, because I don't really see how liberating it is to be indirectly. I don't even want to say co-sign, because I don't think people are co-signing what's going on, but they're indirectly, for the lack of a better term, co-signing, since I can't think of something in the moment, indirectly co-signing what's going on, not necessarily because they want it to happen, but because they don't think we should speak up about it. And I don't really see how that's liberating for black people. I don't see what black people gain by being silent about other groups of people being victims of white supremacy too. So and then too, like, there are a lot of things that are being said that are, in my opinion, just based purely in emotion. That's not even based in any sort of data or any sort of analytics. It's purely just emotional based, emotionally based conversation that some people are engaged in. So let me continue. I'm just gonna read the article and then stop as I go along as things come to me. So I start out by saying, if people think it is okay to stay silent as families are separated at the border, herded into internment camps, and talking about children here too, not just adults. We all know that by now because we've been watching the news. But we are talking about children. They actually have a place for babies. That is how evil and devil, that's the level of devilry that is going on right now in this country within the Trump administration. That's why, like, I can't possibly look at that type of devilry and just stay silent. It's just not possible for me. Maybe it's possible for other people. It's just not possible for me. And then giving drugs against their will, because that's something else that has come out that I don't really, it's been mentioned in the media, but I don't really think they've hammered this home well enough. Okay, there's an actual lawsuit, and I actually provide the link in the article. There's a lawsuit where people are saying that they're saying that it's vitamins, right? But obviously that's BS. Obviously that is complete and total horse, what. Okay, it's not vitamins. They've been injected with something against their will, or at least it comes off as being against their will. And when some of these politicians have gone through, the facilities, they've talked about how sedated the people who are the migrants who are in these cages, like animals. Well, that's how they keep them. I'm not saying they are that. They're keeping them in cages like they're dogs. Okay, the most dehumanizing. I mean, they do that in prisons too, by the way. Like, that's something else that people don't really know about. I remember, and this is kind of off topic, but when I was young, I had to have been like no older than 10. I don't know why I was on a tour of a prison, but for some reason I was on this tour of a prison in Baltimore City, because that's where I was That's where I was born. Like a lot of people don't, a lot of people may or may not know that I was born in Baltimore City. I wasn't necessarily raised there, but I was raised in sort of the suburbs outside of Baltimore in the county area. But yeah, like I was and I just remember seeing black men in cages. And I don't really remember their faces, like, but I just remember just even at that young age, just knowing that there was something dehumanizing going on here, of just seeing another human being in a cage. So I'm a digress on that, but that happens in prisons too. People should know that. But yeah, it's like so these politicians that have gone through these facilities, they've talked about how sedated these migrants look. And how the migrants aren't making eye contact, they're not saying anything, almost as if they're drugged up. Okay? So they've been herded into internment camps, they've been given drugs against their will, and whatever else comes out from this. Because trust and believe, what we know is the tip of the iceberg. It might be years before we know what's really going on here. Okay, this country, you're gonna hear me say this a lot throughout this video. This country is on some Nazi shit right now. And that is the main reason why I can't stay silent. If you're not gonna speak up about Nazism, then what are you gonna speak up about? You know? At some point in time, my humanism, my basic human principles, my humanity kicks in, and I can't just look at stuff like this that's going on and say, well, that's their problem. I mean, that kind of lowers my humanity to a degree, and it aligns me with white supremacy if I were to take that position. But I'm gonna get to that in a second, because that's actually what I'm seeing, the disturbing messages that I'm seeing some people spread in the black community on this issue. So what I was saying, I've been adding a lot to this article. I haven't gotten through the first sentence yet. But yeah, I was saying whatever else comes from this, you do not represent black liberation. So let me repeat. If you think it is okay to stay silent as families are separated at the border, herded into internment camps, given drugs against their will, and whatever else comes from this, you do not represent black liberation. You represent black parallelism to white supremacy, which is what I just said. The solution to black suffering in America isn't to become the monsters some of us say we are opposed to. That is the message being spread by some in black spaces online. It is counterproductive and doesn't accomplish anything but further hatred and disdain for victims of white supremacy. How does it help the black community to essentially take an antagonistic position on other victims of white supremacy? How is that helping black people? Somebody answer this for me. Like, and I'm saying this. I'm saying, like, if you answer, don't like give me emotion. Like don't tell me something that's not data driven. Actually, how tangibly, how are black people benefiting from indirectly co-signing this by our silence? Because that's what you're doing. Silence equals what is that saying? Silence equals complicity, or something of that nature, something along that line. You guys have heard people say that before. So I imagine that if this video gets enough, if this video gets spread around enough, and if the right people sort of support it, and if the right people share it with their friends and their comrades and things like that, I imagine that there are going to be a lot of people who don't like this and don't like exactly what I'm saying, because it goes against it goes against the grain of what, like I said, of what this nativist bend, this new nativist turn that some people in the black community are taking, which me personally I think is a response to Trumpism. I think that is how some people are coping with Trumpism. And we just have to be real with each other. Like, if we can't be real with each other, who are we going to be real with? You know, if we can't keep it real with each other, then what are we even doing? What are we here for? So continuing, I say in the article, I say I try my hardest to base my opinions off of information and data and not emotion. Again, that's something I've said already. Not to say that I don't have opinions that are my own. You know, so I do say things that I'm not saying everything I say is always backed up by a study or a poll or something like that, but I do have opinions that are my own. But at the same time, I try my hardest to base things that I say off of, especially something important like this, you know. And that's actually what I'm not seeing on the opposite side. For an issue as important as this, I see people like Yvette and Boyce and Tariq and some of the other people. I see them on certain occasions use data and use information and things like that. But on this particular issue, I feel like a lot of people aren't doing that for some reason. You know, I see a lot of people who are just kind of doubling down on positions they took like a year ago. Because I don't know if people don't want to backtrack. And then too, I think some people have known that it was going to get this bad and they were just waiting for the shoe to drop. And so they've been mentally preparing themselves for something like this. And so now that this time has come, it's easy for them to come out and say what they've been saying for the past year. You know, that might be it as well. But I try my hardest to base my opinions off of data. Okay, and not emotion, because it's too easy for people to get online because of social media. It's too easy nowadays for people to get online and just make arguments that are just not based in data at all. Or just make data up. Just make facts up. Okay, that's what that whole Cambridge Analytica thing was about. Or at least that was part of what it was about. Just making stuff up. Just completely fabricating, and that's psychological warfare. Like, I've mentioned that in numerous videos, especially with Cambridge Analytica. Like, what they were like openly and directly engaged in psychological warfare. But even like outside of that, like it's a lot of people get online and just share their thoughts, which is perfectly fine. I understand people have free speech and everything, but I think if you have a large platform, you have something of a responsibility to do what other people aren't doing. You know, maybe I'm the dumb one. maybe I'm the one with my small reach, and I'm trying to dot my I's and cross my T's and make sure that I'm having at least, with every article that I write, for the most part, having at least a few sources, at least 4 or 5 sources. Maybe I've been doing it wrong the past 2 years. I don't know. Maybe I should just, start telling people what they want to hear and start making, emotional arguments. Maybe I'll start getting more clicks if I do that. But when I started Black and Intellectual 2 years ago, back in 2016, and it was actually it's going on 2.5 years now. I started it with the agenda of building a base for radical Black progressivism. Understand? So I'm not just pro-Black. I don't just advocate for the Black community. I'm also a progressive. You know what I'm saying? And this is the big thing that differentiates me from some of the other voices that are out there. Okay, and me personally, I don't think that there are enough progressive voices in Black spaces online. I think there's a good number of us on Twitter, But on YouTube, I'm not seeing it. On YouTube, like, black progressives are like, it's like tumbleweeds almost. You know, there just aren't that many of us who are vocalizing through video and or audio our positions, you know, on our progressive positions, and black conservatives in many ways have dominated black spaces online. And hey, you know, it is what it is. But like I said, this is the counter argument. Understand? Like, so people can have a different perspective, and people aren't just hearing one thing from everybody. Like, when you have 3, 4, 5, 6 different black YouTubers with large followings that are all repeating the same, all regurgitating the same talking point, because that's not helpful for the black community in terms of having a debate. That's not helpful. Okay, so I think it's important that this video and this video that I'm making right now, and this article that I've written, it's important that I think, you know, these different perspectives get out there, just for the sake of discussion, if nothing else. It is very important, okay, that black society not only resists Trump, but actively works to reject lines of thought that coincide with Trumpism. Okay, let me repeat that. It is very important that black society not only resists Trump, okay, but that we, as people within the community, we have to sort of self-govern a little bit. We have to work to reject lines of thought that coincide with Trumpism. Back in February, like I said earlier, I made the video called "The Misguided Appeal of Black Nativism in the Age of Trump." And in that video, I broke down and debunked some of the erroneous arguments made by black commentators. Some of them I've mentioned already. And others on YouTube and Twitter. Arguments about how undocumented immigrants take black resources. That's something you hear a lot. And it's not true. Okay, despite the fact that, you know, because you hear people say this, despite the fact that they aren't given access to close to a dozen federal programs that black people have access to. So how can you say they're taking our resources when they don't even have access to all of the shit that we have access to? That doesn't make any sense. And like, this is actually backed up by several studies. Several articles have been written about this. If you watch the video, I go into more detail because I actually, you know, go into the articles specifically. I'm not going to do that in this video because I already did that in the previous video. Just watch that video if you want to hear the arguments about that. And then in that video, I also broke down the misunderstanding about how they're, quote, taking our jobs, which is very misleading. Because if you actually look, there are only a handful of jobs that undocumented immigrants work in. Okay, there are entire fields where, you know, you're not even competing with undocumented immigrants. Again, so the notion that they're taking our jobs is grossly misleading. Okay, but again, that's something you hear people keep repeating that, you know, that keep making those erroneous arguments and using selective information. And if you notice, many of these arguments could very easily come from Fox News, okay, or any other right-wing website or blog. As a matter of fact, Trump himself has made these very same arguments. Okay? Let me pull up this article right quick. I have this Time article. I have this Time article linked in the article that I wrote that I'm reading from now. And the Time article is from 2016, June 29th, 2000. So it was basically like 2 years ago. And the title of the article is "Nothing Donald Trump Says on Immigration Holds Up." Okay? And it has like 5 things, or not 5, it has like 3 things he said about immigration. Trump says, quote, immigrants steal jobs. Okay, and then the Time article debunks that. It says immigrants drain public benefits. Okay, they debunk that. Immigrants don't assimilate. Now, I haven't heard any black commentators say that. That's purely mostly just a right wing thing. You don't hear black people complaining about immigrants not assimilating. That's purely just like some Steve King Representative Steve King type of stuff where he talks about like Western civilization and yada 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 and all this nonsense. But yeah, I've definitely heard black commentators say the first two things. Okay, so understand, like, black people who might be listening to this, I don't know, maybe y'all are cool. Some of these people are making Trump-like arguments. It is what it is. I mean, because this is a direct correlation. You are hearing, people who are trying to come off as for the black community and advocating for the black community, who are making arguments literally come from the words of literally come from the mouth of Donald Trump. And I'm just saying that that's not okay. And we can't pretend that that's not a problem and that's not an issue. Okay. Now, I'm not going to say that the aforementioned commentators are Trump supporters. I don't think that. Okay, I don't think they are Trump supporters, but that doesn't mean, though, that the arguments that they make sometimes can't run parallel to Trumpism. Okay? So, let me go over the first section. That was sort of like the intro in many ways. Let me go over the first section, which is the growing appeal of pitting black people against undocumented immigrants. I've mentioned this in the previous video. I want to say it might have been the video I made about nativism, the misguided appeal of black nativism in the age of Trump. I might have mentioned this in that video. I can't remember specifically because it's been a while since I saw that video. But I definitely, like, when Trump gave his State of the Union address at the beginning of the year, I could see where things were going. When he used that black family, okay, as props, okay, he propped up this black family whose daughter was actually murdered by MS-13, okay. He gave them basically a shout out and acknowledged that they were in the audience. And then the camera panned over to them and you saw the three of them and they were crying and had tears running and it's sad, right? Like, so I'm certainly not comfortable with MS-13, like real MS-13 actually killing people. Like that's obviously abhorrent. That's barbaric. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. You don't co-sign anything like that. So I definitely feel for the family, but at the same time, we have to know when game is being ran on us. And I saw when he propped up that black family at the State of the Union, I saw that there was going to be an effort, and I believe that this is an ongoing effort, okay, to drive a wedge between black people and undocumented immigrants. The white supremacists, y'all gotta understand something. They want all victims of white supremacy, so undocumented immigrants, Muslims, black people, they want all of us to be separated because they want to be able to pick us off easier. And that's what happens when, and not only do they want to pick us off easier because instead of being, sort of one coalition, we're all separated, but they don't just want that. They don't just want the separation. They actually want us fighting each other. Like, so I saw the family up there, and I'm like, okay, here we go. And this is, like I said, this is a concerted effort to do this. And even if you look at a lot of the black collaborators, that are being propped up under Trump. Like this Cornel West said this years ago, and he said it under the Obama administration, and he caught a lot of flack for it. He caught a lot of, I think, unjustified flack for it. Okay, he caught a lot of unnecessary heat when he said we're this is the age of the black sellout. And this is the age of the black sellout. It is. Like, Cornel West has actually been proven to be prophetic in stating that. And it's just that we're seeing that now clearly under Trump. Whereas before, when he said it, when Obama was in office, nobody really wanted to hear it because Obama was still, people were still like sort of hypnotized by the Obama presidency. Okay, and the first black, the black first family. You know what I'm saying? So, like, people weren't really open to that type of talk when Obama was in office, but now that Trump is in office, yeah, we actually see it. Like, because we actually now see black people clearly aligning themselves with white supremacy. You know, whether you want to talk about Candace Owens, whether you want to talk about, I've mentioned this video I made in the past. I've mentioned this video several times. I made a whole video about black collaborators, aka coons. Okay. And you're seeing even a lot of these collaborators come on television and advocate against, undocumented immigrants. So we can't sit back and pretend that the white supremacists who, some of us are so, so opposed to, that they aren't actually going out of their way to get black people to think this way. So if you are black, and especially if you're listening to this video right now, if you are black and you are making or advocating a lot of these same arguments, okay, knowing that this is something that the white supremacists want, how do you reconcile that? I'd just like to know that. How do you reconcile taking a position that you know is a position that really only helps racists? It doesn't help the black community, okay? But you're still somehow pro-black, and you're still somehow advocating for black liberation, even though you're taking positions that the white supremacists want you to take. How do you make sense of that? That to me, that's a contradiction. I don't know about anybody else, but to me, that's a contradiction. So, like I said, their daughter was killed by MS-13, and Trump saw an opportunity not only to continue to push his xenophobic agenda, but to also devilishly use a grieving black family to drive a wedge between immigrants and black people. And like I said, sadly, it's working. Members of the family later appeared on Fox News and called Trump, quote, very genuine and a, quote, very nice president. Okay. Before attacking black Democrats for not standing up and buying into the charade that was on full display. So, these people were handpicked. They specifically got a family that would go along with this. I don't know if they gave them money. I don't know what happened. I don't know how they got them to come, to the State of the Union. Maybe it was just a situation where, the White House called and it's like, okay, well, I've never gotten a call from the White House before to go to an event, so let's just go to this event. It might have just been as simple as that, but they seem like they were a little screened, in my opinion. They come off as, especially like if they hadn't gone on Fox News and thrown black Democrats under the bus, then I wouldn't think that way. But the mere fact that they after the State of the Union, they went on Fox News and started sounding a little collaborating like, then that just tells me, it feels like to me that they were screened, but I could be wrong about that. And like I said, I feel sorry for the family, but we cannot allow ourselves to be used as puppets. We cannot allow ourselves to be used as proxies. Okay, and be used as tools for somebody else's agenda, for a white supremacist agenda. Okay, To Trump, all immigrants are MS-13. So he brought out the family because he was talking about MS-13 and he was going on his xenophobic tirade against immigrants. But to Trump, all immigrants are MS-13. He's made that very clear. He does not differentiate between actual MS-13 members and undocumented migrants fleeing oppressive cartels in their native lands. You have people from El Salvador and Guatemala and these other places that are fleeing cartel violence because of the drug war, which is something that's not being brought up at all in terms of why these people are actually coming here and the role that the United States government has played in creating these problems in their native countries, okay, which is causing them to flee in the first place. Nobody's wanting to talk about that. Nobody's wanting to talk about the death toll that the drug war has racked up in these other countries, in these Latin American countries. Okay, but Trump doesn't differentiate between actual MS-13 members and undocumented migrants. To him, they're all MS-13. Okay, so just because you're being given a little shine because of your situation, which is sad, okay, but just because your plight is being given a little shine, don't allow yourself to be used just for a pat on the back. If something like that happened to my family member and I knew Trump was the one that called me, I'd be like, no, I'm cool. I'll mourn my family in the comfort of my loved ones. I would refuse to be used as a prop for any white supremacist. But this kind of just goes to show you that you have some black people who are willing to be used in that way for a little bit of a pat on the back, essentially. And that's just not cool. We gotta be stronger than that, people. Black people should know how this feels because the same damn thing has been done to us for generations. Lumping all immigrants in with MS-13, same way they lump all black people in with all sorts of things, and have gotten also black people caught up for years by lumping black people together so they could herd more of us into prison camps. Concentration camps, essentially. Why don't prisons are concentration? I just thought about that. Prisons are a type of concentration camp. You get tortured in prison. There have been stories of people who have been experimented on in prison. You can get murdered in prison. You can get raped in prison. That's a damn concentration camp. But I digress. We know how this feels. So we honestly, black people, we should be the most empathetic of all. We should be the most empathetic because we have been victims of this same agenda for a very long time. If there's anyone who should understand the plight of undocumented migrants, it's us. Yet there are voices, black voices, telling their black listeners to ignore all of that and to adopt a cold and unempathetic position on this major issue because they don't speak up for us. Which is not true. It's not universally true. Okay, but even if it were, okay, what some of these folks really want to say is, well, nobody's paying me to care, so I don't care. Let's just be honest. If like I said, if we cannot be honest with each other, who are we going to be honest with? Some people are taking this position purely because they're not being paid to do otherwise. Purely because there's no financial incentive for them to take the humanist position. For some people, it is more financially expedient to be dismissive about what's happening at the border than to actually Speak out against it. Empathy and humanity should not come with empathy and humanity should not come with strings and dollar signs attached to it, because it immediately makes it inauthentic. People act like other groups have to kiss the ring of blackness and take a bullet for us before we're supposed to speak up for what is right. That's ridiculous and goes against the entire history of real black liberation, which I will get to in a second, which historically has spoken up for other groups of disadvantaged people, while at the same time speaking up for black issues. So don't pretend we can't walk and chew gum at the same time, the way some people would have you think. The problem is creating an enemy out of undocumented immigrants works on some black people because, honestly, I think it makes some of us feel better about our position or lack thereof in American society. I think to crap on undocumented immigrants, people fleeing persecution, makes some black people feel better about themselves because we constantly get crapped on in American society. I don't know. I think some people turn around and think to themselves, well, if we, how does that feel? How does it feel to crap on other groups of people? So this is how it feels to be indifferent. This is how it feels to if you can't complain about how other people in society react to black people being shot by cops and the silence from other communities, and then turn around and be silent about other victims of white supremacy. You're doing exactly what you accuse other people of doing to you. So that's why I say, I think for some people are actually emotionally getting something out of crapping on immigrants. Like that's the perception that I get. That's the psychological perception that I get from some people. Black people are constantly under attack on a multitude of fronts. So some may think when it comes to other groups being attacked, we should back off because we're already dealing with a lot as it is. And while I understand this line of thought, I can't consciously endorse it. Yes, black people have been under constant attack since slavery, and it really has been nonstop and relentless. I think non-blacks take this for granted. Okay, and some go as far as to insinuate that we are exaggerating our claims. Understand, however, that they won't stop with undocumented immigrants. And there's no such thing as, quote, saving our energy, okay, for when they come for us. Because they're already coming for us. They're just going to they're already shooting us. They've been doing that for years. So what they're going to do is they're going to turn the heat up. And I've believed for a long time now, with a lot of these shootings, and there was actually another shooting of a young man by the name of Antoine Rose in Pittsburgh. Okay? And so they've been doing this for a long time, and I think some people I think get a little bitter. And I'm not saying that their feelings are necessarily even unwarranted. I think some people get a little bitter, rightfully so to an extent, because they see all of this stuff happening to black people, and it just doesn't gain the same level of traction as things that happen to other groups. Okay, Black death is completely ignored in this country. Okay, but that is just a extra layer of shame that's on America. That's why this country is becoming a fascist dictatorship. That is why America is becoming a fascist state. It ignores the murder of black people. It ignores what's going on to undocumented immigrants. It ignores the surveillance state and how the Bill of Rights is being torched. There are a lot of constitutional and human rights violations within America that are just completely not taken seriously. You cannot allow these types of things to fester in society and think that you're still going to have some type of fucking democracy. And pardon my language. Okay, but this is really kind of getting under my skin a little bit. So, what you should expect, I'm not even surprised that Donald Trump left the Human Rights Council. I'm not surprised by that. We violate human rights on a daily basis in this country. And we have been. People were thinking it's hypocritical for Saudi Arabia to be, and I do think it's hypocritical for Saudi Arabia to be on the Human Rights Council. That's a joke. That's a freaking joke. But it's also a joke for us to be on that council. I wouldn't necessarily say we're as bad as Saudi Arabia, but we're bad. We're definitely not good. That's for dang sure. We make a mockery of human rights. So when I saw Donald Trump and the Trump administration was leaving the Human Rights Council, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's honestly not surprising. As much as, because not only have we violated human rights on a daily basis in this country, but we're actually probably about to make it worse. So if you're about to double down on human rights abuses and human rights violations and constitutional violations, specifically not so much about immigrants, but about stuff that's being done to Americans. If you're about to double down on that, you don't want to be in any type of human rights organization. You don't want anybody, and it's funny. Like the day before the Trump White House left the Human Rights Council, the day before that happened, one of the members of the Human Rights Council, I want to say the UN Human Rights Council, called out the United States on what it was doing at the border. Now, the excuse they gave for why they left was, oh, well, we don't like the bias against Israel, which I think that might have something to do with it, because we are, and look at who we're defending. Look at who we defend in the Middle East. We defend freaking Israel and their gross human rights abuses against Palestinians. Look at how hard we go for Israel. You don't think a country that goes that hard for an apartheid state isn't breaking all sorts of human rights violations and laws here in America? You don't think that type of barbarism isn't going to make its way home eventually? So I'm gonna have to digress on that. I've gone a little off topic, but I just had to, put that in there because I said in the article that I wrote, there's no such thing as saving our energy. Black people are spent energy in terms of our energy. We're spent. We've been fighting against racism for decades. Generations even. What energy do we have to save? So, because of that, the smart thing to do is to start now, if for no other reason than to get a head start. They're coming, if they're gonna come for us anyway, we might as well get a head start. Instead of waiting around for them to come and get us. Which is what, the talking points that some black commentators use. We should just sit on our asses, sit on our hands, sit around and wait for the brown shirts to come. That's ridiculous. That is literally advocating for docility. That is advocating for inaction. You have people in black spaces on YouTube and online who are literally telling black people that we should put our arms down. We should take a defenseless position. But some people think that some people think that's a good idea. For whatever reason. So now the next section The next section is co-opting the language of black liberation to fit a black conservative agenda. Black liberation has never, ever has it been synonymous with political conservatism. First of all, political conservatism historically has always been tied to the worst aspects of white supremacy. Okay, because the most conservative group in America are white people, especially white men. They're easily the most conservative group in the country. Black people, on the other hand, on a lot of issues, not all issues, but on a lot of issues, we're actually the most progressive. And I know I've heard some people say otherwise, that I don't think black people are as conservative as people think. I think that we're conservative on a couple issues, a couple social issues. I think black people are more conservative than white people and Latinos on some conservative issues, on some social issues. But if you look at things like climate change, if you look at things like different types of reform, okay, if you look at things like gun ownership, black people are overwhelmingly more progressive on gun ownership and wanting more gun laws than white people and other groups of people. Which, again, makes sense because there's been so much violence in the black community historically because of guns. So you would expect black people to have a more progressive opinion on that issue. I know, like, some people might not see this if you're looking purely just within the social media bubble. You have to kind of get out of the social media bubble to actually see this. And like I said, there's actually polling data to back this up. If you guys want to read something that some polling data that I found, this is recent. This is from NBC News. This is from NBC News. And there's actually, you know what, I might have to just post. I'm not going to go over the poll itself. I'm just going to post the poll in the description box of the video. And if you want to read that, and this is just one poll of several that I've seen. And this isn't even the only issue. Climate change and gun ownership are just two issues where black people are more progressive than other groups of people. But, so like I said, black liberation has never been synonymous with political conservatism. Okay, not to say that there haven't been vaguely conservative voices or positions taken by proponents of black liberation in the past, but overall, it was never a conservative ideology. What we have today is something other than black liberation. It tries to sound like black liberation, but when you see that the loudest voices pushing these ideas forward also don't want to speak up for African immigrants and Afro immigrants from the Caribbean and Latin America, you begin to see how fake their black liberation, their stance on black liberation actually is. This is when you start to see that conservatism come out in people, and come out in some of these people with large platforms. Okay, it's truly a new nativist interpretation of black liberation that says that the only people who matter are black Americans. Okay, so, stop calling yourselves Pan-Africanists. Stop saying you support all black people. You don't. Like, if you don't care what happens to African immigrants, if you don't care what happens to Haitians, if you don't care about Afro-Cubans, and I don't think Afro-Cubans have been gone after, but these different groups of African, people within the African diaspora and Latin America, if you don't care about them, then you really don't care about black people. Like you literally are taking a nativist position on black issues. And if you want to say just black Americans and black America first and try to create some sort of pro-black version of what Trump says when Trump says America first, if you want to add some sort of pro-black twist to that and say black Americans first, go right ahead. I'm not going to stop you. But again, people who are listening to this and who listen to some of these voices, I don't think people realize how parallel some of these talking points are to Trumpism. I don't think people realize that. Or maybe people do and just don't care because they believe it, and this is kind of what they want to hear anyway. I don't know which it is. Now, we have to ask ourselves something. What is black liberation really? Okay? Black liberation is one of those terms with many different interpretations. I've laid out a little bit of what it isn't. Okay, so black liberation is not nativism. Okay, and it's never been that. So I guess I should actually explain before I end this video. I should explain a little bit about what it is before ending the video. I'm not talking so much about the religious nature of black liberation, which is known as a black liberation theology. I'm speaking more about the socio-political nature of black liberation, which I call black liberation philosophy. And I don't think anybody's ever called it that or used that term, but that's what I'm calling it. Black liberation philosophy. Black liberation not only has a radical religious history, it has a radical economic history as well. You could easily include both together, but for the sake of discussion, I want to just separate them for now. So, here's my definition. Black liberation philosophy is the ideological nature of pro-black thought. Black liberation philosophy is the ideological nature of pro-black thought. It includes everyone from Frederick Douglass to Angela Davis. Okay, it has no one definition, which is why I look at it. I look at it more as being an abstract philosophy than some sort of narrow construct. Okay, but black liberation has evolved throughout the years, but there are some common themes. And here are some of the common themes that I've come across in my studies. And I have, in the article, I have 10 things listed. So black liberation is the love of community. Black liberation is generally radical and progressive. Black liberation is respect for the black woman. Black liberation is critical of capitalism and the role it plays in black suffering. Black liberation has always had alliances and comrades out. Check this out. This is number 5. Black liberation has always had alliances and comrades outside of the community, but they must have the same purpose and goals that we have. Okay, that's key. They must have the same purpose and goals that we have. And this is kind of something, and I've talked about this in the past. This is kind of something that on the left, among a lot of black leftists, something we've butted heads with in terms of a lot of white leftists and white liberals and white progressives, because a lot of us aren't on the same page in terms of where white liberals are and white progressives are. Some of them, not all of them. And where black leftists are and black progressives. We're not always on the same page on a lot of these issues. Okay, so that's a breakdown in any sort of alliance or camaraderie, okay, that you might have. The stipulation, okay, and you've had some very militant black groups in the past that had white allies. Okay, so let's stop pretending that you can't, like I said before, let's stop pretending that you can't do both at the same time. You can't walk and chew gum at the same time. Okay, but that's the caveat. They have to be on the same page with us on our issues and what we say about our issues. Okay, so then number 6, black liberation is intellectually thought-provoking and not dumbed down. Okay, black liberation, number 7. Black liberation is self-determination. Acknowledgement that while we should seek government restitution, we have more to gain by working together than against one another. Number 8. Black liberation is global. Again, this is a lot of the nativists aren't going to like this. Okay, black liberation has always been global. From Europe to Africa to the Caribbean, it is the understanding that white supremacy impacts all of us. All of the major black liberation philosophers and intellectuals and theorists in the pre-civil rights era, when colonialism in Africa was still a thing, many of them spoke out against African colonialism. Okay, in the 20s, I want to say it was, or around the time of World War One, you actually had some black people who went to Ethiopia. Some of y'all might have heard this story. You have black people who went to Ethiopia to fight with the Ethiopian government against the Italians, against fascist Italy. Some of y'all might know that. Some of you might not know that. But there was always a strong global sentiment among black liberation theorists. And some people want to say Pan-Africanism is dead. No, it really isn't. What's actually happening is, like I said before, there's this resurgence well, not resurgence, but there's this rising tide of nativism within black spaces, where people are trying to distance the black community from other groups because, I'm not going to rehash what I've said over the past, hour or so already. You guys know how I feel about that, though. Okay, so, but yeah, black liberation is global. Black liberation is disruptive. Okay? This also contradicts some of the things that you see a lot of black conservatives advocate, because a lot of black conservatives, they really aren't that disruptive. A lot of black conservatives want black people to kind of give in to the current structure, to some degree. They want some degree of acceptance of capitalism, and true black liberation was always very disruptive. Okay, that there's not, even to a degree, even being maybe a little anarchist to a certain extent. Not always, because like I said, there are different strains of black liberation. There are different perspectives within it. So it's not always, or it hasn't always been anarchist, but it has black liberation has in the past kind of dipped its toe into anarchism a little bit. And then number 10, black liberation has existed in some form in every era of American history. And today is no different. Black liberation is just as alive and well today as it was 100 years ago. And just like, back then, it is despised and it is hated. So black liberation philosophy is ours. It's the one thing that can't be taken from us, because no one else really wants it. This is a philosophical foundation that is truly ours. They can co-opt our music, jazz, R&B, rap. They can co-opt our music. They can co-opt our style. They can co-opt our slang. They can co-opt our swagger. Slagger, what the heck is that? They can co-opt all of those things, but they cannot co-opt our philosophy. They cannot claim our philosophy. Black liberation is our philosophy. It is the philosophy of black intellectuals and black activists since the time of slavery. Sticking true to the spirit of radical black progress is what separates us from white supremacy. And this is what I'm going to end this video on, because this is where I ended the article. Sticking true to the spirit of radical black progress is what separates us from white supremacy. While we strive for progress and equality, they strive for the past and for supremacy. And when I say they, I'm talking about white supremacists. We are nothing like them. So we shouldn't make arguments that they make because we are better than that. We are. I truly believe that. People are entitled to their opinions. Okay. Yeah, so I concede that. People are entitled to their opinions. But don't start fights on fronts where there are no wars. Don't start fights on fronts where there are no wars. Fight the battle in front of you. And don't become distracted by what other groups hurting as much as yours, hurting as much as the black community. Don't get distracted by what other groups are or aren't doing, when they don't have a whole lot to begin with. These people are literally, these undocumented immigrants are literally coming into the country with their clothes on their backs. That's it. Y'all expect these people to show up to protest? Really? They barely have nothing, but you want them at a protest? Like, we have to start thinking through some of the things that we're saying here. Because I see a lot of people just making blanket assumptions. And telling black people that they should do things that are not going to help the black community. There are no counter arguments to internment camps. None. No arguments that are not based in emotion. So yeah, don't start fights on fronts where there are no wars. I think if there's anything you can take away from this video, take that away. Remember that quote. Don't start fights on fronts where there are no wars. Starting a not a literal fight, but starting creating a friction, I should say, between undocumented immigrants and black people is starting a fight on a front where there was no war. You're creating a problem with a particular group where there wasn't a problem before. So we need to keep our eye on the prize. We need to keep our eyes on white supremacy. Point blank, period. Instead of throwing other groups under the bus because it makes us feel a little bit better about our position. Because that's really what's going on here. I'm not built that way. So I'll see how people react to this video. Definitely share it because it needs to be heard. Because we need some different opinions out here. In black spaces on YouTube. We desperately need some different opinions. Okay, because when everybody's starting to sound the same way, that's a problem. When everybody's repeating each other, that's a problem. Okay. That sounds like groupthink. And there's starting to be like a lot of groupthink in the pro-black space online. It's a hell of a lot of groupthink. And we need to stop. We need to start thinking critically about this issue. Not saying cape for anybody. It's another word that people like to use. Are you caping? No, I'm not. I don't have a cape on. Being against internment camps. Actually, I'll say it like this: if being against internment camps and being against children separated from parents is caping, then I'm caping. I'll wear that humanist cape. just to get under some people's skin, because people like saying that. I don't view it that way, but if that's what it is, then that's what it is. Because like I said, there are no counter arguments to that. There are no counter arguments to Nazi fascism. And silence is tacit approval. So, like this video. Check out my blog at www.blackintellectual.com. And I will talk to you later.